All right. What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. Thank you for watching this over on Rumble, YouTube for now, and X. And thank you for listening on the podcast platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Actually, I may as well show the screen. That's where you can find me on Spotify, my recent episodes. So if you don't want to pay me $3 extra a month, go over to, which is on Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. Enjoy this free episode, which goes out every Wednesday. Joining me this week is Ken Silva. He's a journalist and now author. He's the author of the book, The Trump Assassination Plots: What the Investigations Missed and Why It Matters. And it does matter. And I think an interesting word there that's used in that subtitle there is missed, because there's a lot of things people missed. And there's also a lot of just looking back at how not only what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, but also happened in Palm Beach, next to the near the airport and the golf course, as well as just a few weeks ago at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and all the other threats and implicit threats and everything that we've seen in this rise of. I don't want to call it an assassination culture, but I just see a large flippancy or towards political violence that we are seeing in society. So that's why I'm pleased to have Ken Silva on to talk about his book and get into what what went on and why we collectively decided to stop talking about it. So first of all, Ken, welcome to the show.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be with you.
So what prompted you to really get into writing a book like this? For example, the day after Butler, Pennsylvania, which was nearly 2 years ago, I was immediately, I had plenty of notes, plenty of things on my mind to do a podcast. And I'm thinking, oh, we're going to naively, that there's going to be so many books and podcasts and people talking about this till the end of time. The fact that it's been 60 plus years, we're still talking about Kennedy, we're still talking about Reagan, we're talking about all the any other assassinations or even assassination attempts. And yet, this isn't even 2 years ago, and it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, it's puzzling to me because when I saw Trump get shot in the ear on July 13th, 2024, I was just hanging out on Twitter and it must have gone viral about 5 minutes after the event happened. I was immediately hooked. I was actually streaming ABC News on YouTube, and one of the rally goers is talking to the reporter about, well, hey, they think there were two shooters, one of them up on the water tower, and the cops killed the second shooter on the water tower too. And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be juicy. This is going to be a Kennedy type whodunit case. I immediately typed up a story on the two shooter theory that went pretty viral. And I've since kind of backed away from the two shooter theory. I do think it was just the guy on the rooftop. But nevertheless, that kind of captured my imagination. And as we were just talking before we went on air, I've been a reporter for over 15 years, but I only joined kind of alternative media covering national news in late 2021. So I had missed, Russiagate, COVID, January 6th, the 2020 election, all these major stories that have defined the 2020s. So when I saw this happen, I wanted to latch onto it like a pit bull and kind of be the leading reporter in the country. And yeah, again, puzzlingly, I haven't had much competition. So, it's been a low bar, but I think I've accomplished what I set out to do.
It's really odd thinking about that day. I was working that evening, and my mother-in-law, who's from Pittsburgh, texted me something cryptic. I didn't know what it was because I was busy working. And as soon as I got done with work, I was heating up some food, and I looked at my phone and I saw all of this. But she's like, "Oh, of course it happens in Pennsylvania." And I'm going, "What are you talking about?" And I looked, and I saw it all, and I was shaking in anger to see this happening. And people can say whatever they want about Donald Trump, or if you're Republican, conservative, MAGA, whatever the case is. We really shouldn't live in a civil society to live in a time when you're just going to assassinate political figures. Is this the 1960s all over again? And I just looked at the amount of people that were so like, whatever, okay, yeah, so, oh, well, too bad he missed or missed it by that much, Maxwell Smart type of thing. And I'm going, whoa. And then just a little over a year later, same thing happened, except successfully with Charlie Kirk, and seeing
Hmm.
the amount of people celebrating this. And I'm just going, yeah, this is not good. But those are the people. People, whatever you want to say about opiate of the masses, the media figures that covered this for about 2 days, and it seemed like it was a coordinated effort for us not to talk about it. Did you feel that way as well?
Absolutely. I mean, this thing was out of the media within about 2 weeks. And, keep in mind, it was in the midst of a major uh, presidential campaign from both parties. I think the RNC was that very next week. Uh, Soon thereafter, the Democrats uh, participate in a soft coup against Joe Biden. You get Kamala Harris thrust into the spotlight. She spends like $1 billion in the span of a few weeks. So it was a chaotic time period for the country. But nevertheless, to me, this is the biggest domestic story that's happened in the last at least 3 or 4 years. I mean, you've obviously got the wars in Russia, Ukraine, what's going on in Palestine and Iran. Those are bigger deals, but I can't think of much bigger domestically. So the fact that not only, the mainstream media ignoring this, which, maybe that kind of makes sense because it's politically inconvenient for them. Like if when January 6th happened, we had that beamed into our televisions for the next 3 years. But when this happened, maybe they want to ignore it. But even conservative media has largely been quiet on this. And again, I really don't know what to make of it.
Here's my theory on it is conservatism, Con Inc., or just conservatives in general, because of how our culture has been since the, end of World War II, this post-war consensus we're dealing with, is that conservatives are bred to be reactive and not proactive. And that's why in the 90s, Rush Limbaugh got very big because George, or because after Bush lost in '92, and you had Bill Clinton, and El Rushba was the cattle prod in the side of the Clinton administration. Then when Bush won in 2000, Rush was kind of irrelevant for a number of years in the wilderness and drug arrests, everything. All of a sudden, Obama comes into power, so it seems that there's a lot of money to be made in being reactive. So then, when the news media, which conservatives are like, oh, that's the liberal drive-by media. When the media says, hey, we're going to stop talking about Butler. Okay, we're good. Are we all good? Okay, sounds good. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how Kamala Harris is having a brat summer. We're going to talk about how she's
Yeah.
dancing in her Converse Chuck Taylors. And because of that, Conservative Inc. didn't say, well, no, wait a second. The guy who used to be president and could very well be the next president almost was millimeters from being killed, and now we want to talk about how Kamala Harris and Charlie XCX are very brat and having this great summer. And yet they all fell in line because conservatives just reacted to what was placed in front of them by the news media.
Yeah, and I mean, really, regardless of what you think of Trump, you almost got to give him credit because this could have been his like Reichstag fire. He could have exploited this and kind of really pushed the country to a brink of civil war if he was that cynical, which I do think he's a cynical guy in a lot of ways. But he's a different animal from the typical reactionary Republican, and his silence has been the most puzzling at all of all. To the point where now people think it's because he staged this all, which I guess we should probably address that. I don't think it was staged at all. I have a footnote in the book that kind of explains the reasons. First of all, you know, hi- if he did stage it, you think he'd be using it again as like his Reichstag fire, this huge propaganda event to justify every action he did. But forensically, if you read the book, you'll see that the local police were very close to catching the would-be assassin Thomas Crooks. So it was almost a non-event in the first place. But the bullets were real. The New York Times captured the second shot whizzing over Trump's shoulder. So unless you think the Times is in on it, photoshopping bullets into their own pictures, like the Times helping out Trump, he had bullets shot at him. There were people killed that day. There was bodies, shrapnel flying everywhere. And one of my more favorite pieces of evidence showing that this was an authentic event was the fact that he actually was skirted out off the scene immediately afterwards, and in the chaos, his own doctor was left behind. So he had to be taken to Butler Hospital and examined by local doctors. And in fact, they took one of the local doctors and flew him on Trump Force One to the next destination. So you think if this was staged, it would have been him keeping his personal physician close at hand and them not letting any of the locals look at his ear. I think the biggest thing people point to and thinking it's staged other than his silence is the lack of a scar on the ear. But, if the bullet were just to graze the skin and not actually cut through the cartilage, it would produce a lot of blood without leaving any scarring. So it very much was an authentic event. All the evidence points to that. Um, which just raises the question, why is he quiet? I think there could be darker factors at play.
Well, let's get into that in a little bit, but I want to just go backwards a tad. So in our email exchange, I talked about how I was in Butler not too long ago, about a few weeks ago, and I have a video I'm sharing right now of me in my car with the sloped roofs in the background. So for people who remember hearing about the sloped roofs, why the feds weren't able to go up there because they were too narrow or whatever, or steep or whatever the case was. They're really not. I mean, my roof in my house is way steeper than these roofs were. But talk about, just kind of set the scene. Butler, Pennsylvania. It's a Saturday night. He's doing this rally. Trump is known for doing all these, huge tens of thousands of people rallies several times per day. Pennsylvania being a swing state, being a huge battleground state, and eventually a couple of months later, it did turn out to be one that put him over the edge. But why Butler? Why that location, which is half airport, half fairgrounds? Talk about what led to that and some of the failures that occurred, because wasn't Jill Biden also doing an event in Pittsburgh, which is about an hour away from Butler, and that their Secret Service was diverted to there as opposed and leaving him with the B and C squad? Do I have that fact right?
That's, yeah, more or less correct. So, first of all, why the Butler Farm Show in the first place? In 2020, he held a rally in Butler, and it was actually at the Butler Airport, which is a lot more easy to secure. There isn't public streets. They have clear lines of sight to where Trump was speaking. Uh, it's buildings all surrounding it, non-public buildings. But apparently there's a car show that day, so they decided to move it to a farm show, which, as you said, does have like a hybrid little airstrip, but it's mostly just a big flat parcel of land with businesses and residential areas surrounding it. Really tough to secure, so much so that even the local congressman, Mike Kelly, the local sheriff, all implored the campaign not to hold the rally there, but they were pretty much insistent that this is the best location. Like you said, they were expecting close to 15,000 people. So, that's just the decisions that was made. I think the campaign had a lot more control than even the Secret Service, because one of the things they were supposed to do is put a bunch of farm equipment and Penske trucks in between the AGR building that was used by the would-be assassin to block the line of sight to Trump. When they all showed up that day, though, the equipment wasn't there, and I guess there was just a lack of leadership initiative, and the event went forward. Trump was actually in Florida for the majority of that day, and he showed up late to Butler, uh, close to like 4:30 p.m. He gets in Pittsburgh. The crowd's already been assembled. It takes almost another 45 minutes or so to get his convoy to the farm show. And by then, there'd already been multiple sightings of Thomas Crooks, including him acting suspiciously with a rangefinder. So, interrupt me at any point you want, or
Well,
we can.
the one thing I
Yeah.
will say about a rangefinder, there's two reasons you have a rangefinder. One is you're about to go golfing, and the other is you're about to go shooting. And I don't know if there's any golf courses nearby, but I don't think anyone's golfing on the fairgrounds.
Yeah, Thomas, he didn't really look like much of a golfer, just
No.
stringy kid, jorts, big baggy t-shirt. And the snipers actually notice it, the local snipers do notice him with a rangefinder. This is a little bit after 5 o'clock. Again, Trump hadn't even arrived by then. And so the locals start spreading the word amongst themselves, and the head of the local command center even lets the feds know, but the feds don't really take any initiative. And, to be fair, again, Trump hadn't even arrived. So this wasn't like a high level emergency atmosphere uh, at that time. Things really get juicy though, like it's around 6:02. Now Trump had arrived and he actually takes the stage at 6:02. And this is when the local snipers again see the guy who had been lurking around with a rangefinder. And now the pursuit goes a lot more seriously. Uh, when he's spotted at 6:02, he takes off running away from the person who saw him, but the local sniper thought he was running all the way around the building when in fact he headed into an alcove and he climbed up on the roof. So because they thought he was going around instead of up onto the roof, they're now looking all north of the building. Meanwhile, Crooks is assembling his rifle on top of the roof.
Which is what we're
Now,
what we're seeing right now. And
yeah,
for people only listening right now to the podcast, I'm showing the on the ground footage of people saying there's a guy on the roof. There's a guy on the roof who doesn't
yeah.
look like he's not wearing fatigues. He's not somebody who even the normal person would consider to be a federal agent or a sniper. That this is a somebody who looks like he's about to do some damage, and people are pointing it out. He's on the roof. There's a guy on the roof and the president is still speaking on the stage.
Yeah, one of the issues is that the local command center was totally separate from the Secret Service command center, which my understanding is that is pretty unusual. So those are all local cops that have the responsibility uh, for around the AGR building. I shouldn't say responsibility because really it's the Secret Service's responsibility to make a better plan to protect the president at all costs. But it was like the local jurisdiction. And so you've got the local command center guy on the radios by 6:08 p.m., 3 minutes before the shooting. He radios, yes, there's a guy on the roof. He's not one of ours. And so now all the locals are aware and they're starting to like try to scale the building themselves and really chase the kid. Uh, one one of the key mistakes, though, that the local command center leader made is that there were two separate channels, Channel 3 and Channel 4. Channel 3 was for like the cops on the ground, the cops that were doing traffic patrol that decided to abandon their posts and assist in the chase. But the snipers that were up on the second story of the AGR building were on Channel 4. So instead of switching over to Channel 4 and letting the snipers know, which at that point they could have just stuck their head out the window and presumably saw Crooks. But instead, the local command center guy picks up his cell phone and calls the Secret Service command center and tells them that there's a guy on the roof. The Secret Service head of the command center insists that he never got this phone call. The message was never relayed to him. But it was after this phone call that the local guy then finally switches over to Channel 4 and lets the snipers inside the building know. But by then, it was like 15 seconds before the shots fired. So it was just a little too late for the locals to react.
So that all goes on, and nobody knows. Nobody. I mean, people are there watching this speech. Trump has the board up there talking about immigration statistics, which he doesn't talk about anymore. But forget about that for a second. And he's talking about all of this that's going on. Moves his head, and the gunshots, and you see there's Selena Zito is on the ground. She talked about it, and a couple of others, but you do see the bullet. And there's so many conspiracy theories that are going on, but a shooting did take place. And Corey Comparatori, who was a firefighter, had died. He was sitting behind the president, and all this is going on. And immediately, immediately, Trump, well, I don't want to say it took a little bit, and then he's looking for his shoes. Then he gets up, he's got blood on his face. He's yelling, "Fight, fight, fight," and ushered off the stage. And in your research, talking to people, what was the mood? Because I think most people they wonder what you would do in a situation like that, but not when it's actually happening. You're dealing with an assassination attempt, a time that people thought we had gotten past since the 1960s, and here we are, the guy that everyone's wearing a red hat, everyone's excited, they're tired of the Biden regime. They're like, yes, we want this guy back again, and he was that close to losing his life. Like, what's the mood for people in the immediate aftermath? And like, what is the mood from people, from journalists there? Because is the word that I heard that was one of the first times CNN was actually there on the grounds of filming in 4K of everything that was going on. Like, what happened in the immediate aftermath in the next 24 hours, let's say?
Well, CNN was there ostensibly because Trump, there was rumors that Trump was going to announce JD Vance as his running mate at that rally. Again, this is just a few days before the RNC kicked off. So, yeah, as far as that goes, I think that's why CNN was probably there for the first time uh, of that whole campaign. The immediate aftermath, you could see the crowd at first, they're stunned, and then they're beyond euphoric that Trump's okay, chanting USA, USA. But after that wore off and they realized what happened, they were very upset at the mainstream media. A lot of people were shouting at reporters, saying like, "You did this." In fact, it's kind of funny. The One of the two people that say they have PTSD from that event is Scott McFarland, who is a former CBS reporter. He did a lot of January 6th coverage, pretty much a state stenographer. And yeah, he said in an interview about a year ago that he has PTSD from that event because he thought that the Trump supporters were going to, like, I guess, lynch him or something. Meanwhile, the guys that actually survived the shooting, David Dutch got shot in the liver. Jim Copenhaver uh, was shot, and they joke about it. They're pretty hardcore Trump supporters. Copenhaver says like, "Oh, I think the bullet that went into me had Trump's earwax on it." Like they kind of make light of it. I think they like it's a tough way to make history, but I think they're kind of almost proud to be shooting survivors. So I kind of like that juxtaposition between them and kind of the pathetic mainstream media that played the victim after all of this.
One of the biggest question marks in recent history is who Thomas Crooks was or is. And I know Tucker Carlson about a year ago put out a whole thing on who is the real Thomas Crooks. What was
Mhm.
his, because we were told he had no internet footprint at all except for, and then Tucker's people found out that he had some strange YouTube account where he would comment on uh, Republican politics or something until about 2020. Then he was a big Biden supporter and mask wearer and vaccine pusher and stuff. And just none of his story makes any sense. And then is it true that there is a video of him in some commercial for I forget, is it not Goldman Sachs? It was for maybe BlackRock, I believe.
That's BlackRock, yeah. Yeah,
Like, what are the odds?
it is a bizarre coincidence. I wouldn't read too much into that. It was just like a commercial about BlackRock managing teachers' funds, and it is a bizarre coincidence that they decided to film inside of Bethel Park High School. It's just like a canned shot of, the teacher pointing at the chalkboard, and then it pans out, and oh, hey, there's Thomas. There's the guy that almost like sparked a civil war. So it is a bizarre coincidence, but I don't know if there's any significance to it. But yeah, I mean, this is like the biggest thing that the investigation did miss. Like Congress did two separate investigations. The House formed a separate panel while the Senate Homeland Security Committee also did their own probe. And they came out with reports that have pretty thorough explanations or accounting for all the security failures by the Secret Service and state and local law enforcement on the day of the shooting, but they don't have hardly any information on Thomas Crooks. And in fact, the FBI totally stonewalled them on this aspect of the investigation. The FBI has over 75,000 records, and they produced maybe a couple dozen to Congress. And it's really pathetic because this congressional task force was actually specially formed by an act of the House. It was like a unanimous vote to form this committee, and they were given subpoena power. So if they had any balls, they could have, you know, not taken no for an answer and actually subpoenaed these records and threatened to hold the FBI in like criminal contempt if they were to continue the stonewalling. But of course, they did take no for an answer. They put out a final report within a couple months, and then again, we haven't heard anything about it since.
It's just very odd. It's odd that we live in a time where, especially if you're somebody who is about, born in the 2000s, that you have some type of digital footprint, that you have a Facebook, and okay, Facebook, that's for boomers, but there's Instagram, there's TikTok, there's Snapchat, there's Twitter, now X. And when it just seemed that it came back, oh, we couldn't really find anything, he wasn't there. I'm going, yeah, that doesn't sound normal for a 20-something-year-old in the modern age.
Yeah, well, they did. So that's a bit of like the Mandela effect, where this kind of false rumor gets spread and kind of takes hold. The FBI never actually said that he didn't have a social media footprint. What they said is that he didn't interact with others, which I guess is kind of like a distinction without a difference. But they did admit from the outset that he was a gamer, he had Discord accounts, multiple social media accounts. I actually obtained his internet data by FOIing the community college, and they gave me like a string of jumbled up code, but I had somebody actually decipher it, and that shows as metadata. That shows what websites he was visiting while he was on the community college campus. Um, from what I could find, he just seemed like a pretty normal kid. Like he visited the Pittsburgh Steelers fan site. Yeah, he was a Game of Thrones fan. He went to Twitter, Reddit. Nothing that really stuck out to me. I mean, he went to like AR15.com, but like who cares? Like he was a gun enthusiast. Like there's nothing
I was
to
looking up Desert
suggest.
Eagles today. Does that mean I'm about to
Yeah,
go on an
exactly.
assassination spree?
Yeah, yeah. So the biggest trove of information, though, we've gotten came, as you mentioned, from Tucker Carlson. And this is from 2019, 2020, when he was only 16 or 17. And it does show him openly espousing, violent rhetoric underneath YouTube videos. In fact, he's openly discussing assassinating U.S. officials and politicians. And he's not only just making these comments, but he was interacting with a known neo-Nazi who lives in Norway, and they're kind of having a back and forth. So I think this is significant for two reasons. A, because it shows that he had to have been flagged by YouTube in some capacity to law enforcement, whether or not the police officer or agents actually, opened up the file and looked at what was specifically was going on. That's another question, but I'm sure he was at least in some sort of computer system. And B, I think it shows kind of kind of profile this kid might have had, where he might have been hanging out on these dark corners of the internet that discuss, terrorism, mass shootings, bombings. Increasingly, like whenever we have a school shooter or a mass shooter, they're usually on these kind of internet forums. Um, and these forums are inhabited by undercover informants and other kind of feds and people monitoring these chat rooms. So I think that gives us a clue as why the FBI might be so hesitant to release information because they'd be admitting that he was on their radar. But we don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's still a mystery, and I just looked at the immediate aftermath and some of the fallout with Secret Service and the um, there was misinformation that was out there, and it just seemed like there were a couple of different stories being put out. And here I am thinking naively that Trump is yelling fight, 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 and part of that fight, fight, fight is not just, we're gonna take back this country, everything, but also we got to get to the bottom of this. What actually happened? And as you mentioned, that it was the week of the RNC, which is a very strange week because Tucker gave a keynote address and JD Vance was announced, and Trump gave the main speech on Thursday night. By Sunday, Joe Biden, with a non-presidential letterhead, announced that he's not going to be president or pursuing re-election going into November. So all these things started changing, but at the same time, Secret Service was being grilled. Yet Donald Trump, the fight, fight, fight guy, was praising Secret Service. Was this an example of him saying, like, basically feeling that I can't piss them off too much because otherwise something like this could happen again? Or what else was going on? What else can we read into this?
That's definitely one of the possible conclusions that I would draw. I mean, but again, this is the same guy who had no problem pissing off, the FBI and the CIA during his first term, but maybe he learned his lesson when they put his kind of sabotaged his first administration, like in revenge. As Chuck Schumer said, the intelligence agencies have 5 ways to Sunday to get at you. But to your point, specifically with the Secret Service, it boggles the mind that he touts these guys as kind of the heroes of Butler who saved the day despite all the failures. He says, like, oh, my guy David, the sniper, saved my life. He responded in 4.2 seconds, which that's just absolutely not true. And that's probably the biggest scandal of the entire day as far as security failures go, is that the Secret Service sniper actually waited 15 entire seconds before responding fire. It was a local cop who saved the day. Crooks got off 8 shots in the first 5 seconds. It was three. The first shot whizzes Trump's ear. Crooks fires two more shots that were pretty close. And then he shoots five. He starts spraying 5 shots like indiscriminately. And then immediately after that eighth shot, you hear a ninth shot. That's coming from a local cop on the ground. And it was an entire 10 seconds later before the sniper, David King, finally responded and put the final bullet through Crooks, which, you could explain that to incompetence. But the troubling thing is that this sniper, David King, is given alternative explanations when pressed on why he waited or like when he saw Crooks. Initially, he tells the House task force that he didn't see Crooks until after all the shooting had stopped. He's later interviewed by the Senate, and he gives the same explanation, but a staffer pulls out the notes that he took immediately after the event, and he says, well, David, your own notes say that you saw Thomas crawling into place. He responds to that by insisting that his notes are inaccurate and that he didn't see anything until after all the shooting was done. But I think it's reasonable to assume that the notes immediately after the event would be, the more accurate account of what he saw and when he saw it. Again, I don't blame people. I find this very suspicious. I'm not going to lie. It could be a case of him just wanting to cover his own ass because Trump's treating him as a national hero. He doesn't want people to know that he really dropped the ball. But it could also be something darker.
Hmm. Last thing I want to ask you about Butler before we go to head on down to Florida is how tough of a shot was that? We've heard about Oswald and all the theories with that and the magic bullet and everything like that, but was it a tough shot if you're just an amateur, you know, a rifle enthusiast or whatever that was?
Well, Thomas was a very dedicated marksman. He was a member of the Clareton Sports Club, which is a shooting range also used by DHS and other law enforcement. He joins there in August 2023 and he goes almost 60 times over the next 11 months. So more than once a week. He'd even go there like on Valentine's Day and other holidays. He was also took a training course at a Keystone shooting range is what it's called. And the person who was taking a class with him, they were using handguns. He said that Thomas shot one target so many times that like he blew the target out. Like so he was pretty good. And people wonder, from 115 yards or roughly that distance, how could he possibly have missed? I mean, again, if you're at the range, you probably could hit a bullseye pretty consistently with his optical. He was using a red dot. It didn't have any magnifying capacity, but pretty close. But the thing was that the local cops were chasing him. In fact, one of the cops uh, climbed up the roof. He says he sees Thomas. Thomas points the rifle at the local cop. The local cop then drops down, and then the shooting happens like 15 seconds later. But you got to put yourself in Thomas's shoes and like, oh crap, I just saw a local cop. They're climbing up on the roof. They're about to get me. I got to do this now. So this is like a really high pressure, high adrenaline situation. And he still came within millimeters of actually securing his objective. In fact, if he would have gone for a body shot, he definitely would have hit Trump. And at Trump's advanced age and health, he might have killed him. Even if he just hit him in the arm, it could have like put Trump in some sort of shock and actually just killed him.
So had that cop not been there, did was he swiveling his gun over there and swiveled back into position, or did he just look over there? Do we know that?
That's what the local cop says. It's Detective Tyler Collins. He says that Crooks swivels his rifle to point it at Collins, and then Collins drops down, and then Crooks presumably reorientates himself. So, yeah, he Collins does. This is on body cam. You could see Collins climbing up, but because his body cam is on his chest, it doesn't actually show Thomas, which is really unfortunate. And it's, if we had like that footage, there would probably be far less speculation about this being a fake event. But that's just because he didn't pull himself all the way up on the roof. So for his body cam only shows like the wall as he's climbing. It doesn't actually show the gun being pointed at him.
So 2 months later in Palm Beach in West Palm, another assassination attempt. Now this one didn't get as close, but there's this weirdo, and we can easily say that, especially when he's in court trying to stab himself in the neck with a pair of scissors or,
Yeah.
or some utensil, I don't remember. But this guy named Ryan Routh, and he's waiting out there. Apparently gets tipped off or something that Trump is going to go golfing in this particular day. And he looks like he's going to try to do the exact same thing that Thomas Crooks tried and failed to do in Butler. And he's going to wait out in the woods. Talk about who Ryan Routh is, his NAFO ties, and all of this other odd stuff, how he was waiting out there for something like 12 hours for this to happen.
Yeah, we don't know for sure that he was tipped off, but it seems like that to me because, as you said, he's hiding in the bushes near the sixth hole of the Palm Beach Trump International Golf Course. And Trump's on the fifth hole, and the Secret Service spots him. The Secret Service fires 5 times, misses all 5 times. He runs away, but he's caught about 45 minutes later. Thankfully, a witness got his license plate, and he was pulled over on the I-95.
Yeah, by the way,
Unlike
people should know, just because I was just down there about a month ago, where the Trump golf course is, it's next to the airport, which is next to I-95. So if you are going to do something like that, it's not like you're waiting in typical South Florida traffic for a while. You could easily jump right on the freeway and get to another city pretty quick, especially on a
it,
Sunday.
it's almost like he had a perfect plan, which raises the questions of did somebody tip him off? First of all, he had been camping out there for about 11 hours before the Secret Service spotted him. In fact, he was there since about 2:30 a.m. And the weird thing to me is that the Secret Service was informed of Trump's golf plans around 2 a.m. So this, Trump tells somebody he wants to golf later that day. It's a last minute thing. The message gets to the Secret Service, and almost simultaneously, or just a couple minutes later, Ryan Routh pops up at that golf course. He had been camping out at a nearby truck stop. So to me, that raises questions like, did somebody leak the plan to Ryan to show up? And then, yeah, there's the fact that how did he know exactly where to go? I guess that spot where he was hiding was also been used by paparazzi photographers to photograph Trump while he's golfing. But that's not like widely known. That's not something you could just really Google. Like, how did Ryan know that that was the perfect spot that photographers also use? That's, another major outstanding question that I have. And then, yeah, it was almost the perfect getaway if a witness didn't hear the shots and see him and think quickly enough to write down his license plate. He could have been at large for, God knows how long. This could have been another Charlie Kirk assassination situation. As far as who Ryan is, uh, yeah, we know a lot more about him than we do Thomas Crooks. Career criminal. He had run-ins with the Greensboro Police Department, multiple time felons in the mid 2000s. Uh, weird. I have questions about why he didn't go to prison for charges like possessing dynamite, having standoffs with the police, possessing more than $30,000 in stolen equipment that he was buying from crackheads who were like raiding construction sites. They're like really wild stuff. And we also don't know exactly how or why he was politically radicalized in the late 2010s. At one point, he was a Trump supporter in the first administration. He jumps on the Tulsi Gabbard train a couple years later. And then when Putin invades Ukraine in early 2022, for some reason, he feels like he's just had enough. He's got to join the fight to defend the free world. He goes to Poland, tries to cross the border to actually join like the International Legion, but he's a 58-year-old construction worker with no combat experience. And they tell him no. So he turns to recruiting foreign fighters, including Syrians and Afghans. And this gets him put on numerous federal and international agencies' radar. A local travel nurse reports him to the FBI, Interpol, the State Department, Customs. The State Department even opened an investigation for illegal arms trafficking. He wasn't trafficking arms, but like that, those regulations cover the human fighter element. And the State Department had an open investigation into him at the time of the assassination attempt. So again, it really boggles the mind of how a multiple time felon who had an active investigation against him at the time of the event was able to operate with impunity right under their noses.
Yeah, it was the whole thing was very odd with him, especially with Ukraine, and the fact that he just again 2 months after what happened in Butler that he's going to decide to do this. Is the motive for him to wanting to assassinate Donald Trump on the golf course because Trump had talked about trying to pull us out of Ukraine, or that when Trump, if you elect me, then I'm going to end the Ukraine war on day one? Is that why?
That's the sense that I get. There was that, and also the fact that he thought Trump was kind of like Putin. I actually interviewed a lot of people who knew him in Ukraine, and he had been talking about, oh, we got to actually invade Russia. I want to be part of the invasion. I want to go to Moscow and put a bullet through Putin's brain. And the guy interviewed me, who was very helpful. He gave me a bunch of information and photos that Ryan had taken. There's another documentarian. He said, Ryan, you got to shut the hell up. There's like Russian spies everywhere in Kiev. Like they're going to take you out if you just openly talk about this out loud. But in any event, I get the sense that after his trip to Ukraine, he viewed it as being unsuccessful. He probably thought the next best thing was taking out Trump. And his plans solidified after Butler. There's text messages where it seems like he wanted to finish the job that Thomas started. Yeah, his motivations are pretty clear. It's the how that's far more interesting, in my opinion.
Wasn't there some kind of weird connection with his son, Ryan Routh's son?
Well, his son, after his arrest, his son comes out with an interview and says, "No, my dad would never do this. He was a peaceful guy." And then they arrest him for child PORN. I don't want to flag
Y-
your
Yeah,
algorithm or
exactly.
anything.
CP.
Yeah, CP. So a lot of people automatically assume that this was to shut the sun up. Like there's comparisons to the Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock. After that event, Paddock's brother actually came out and said, "Oh, my brother would never do this." And then the brother got charged with CP, and those charges were eventually dropped. But I can tell you for sure that that's not the case with Ryan Routh, Ryan's son, because I covered his criminal proceedings in person in court, and he actually had been flagged for CP in late 2023. Sheriffs even showed up to his mother's house. That was like his legal address, but he wasn't there. The sheriff gave the business card to the mother. The mother told the son, who never responded. And then it wasn't until after his dad tried to kill Trump that the feds like returned to Oren's case. Like, oh yeah, we have got an open case on this guy for CP. And yeah, I don't know if they came in to there with that intention. But when they're searching through Oren's devices, they find all kinds of evidence. He pled guilty. Was it this year? I think late last year. And this whole time is kind of blurring together, but he got sentenced to 7 years, and it was like really nasty stuff. He was part of this murky ecosystem called Calm, which is like a community of CP enjoyers, and they like share videos and things like that. So this wasn't a case of them just trying to shut the sun up. Like he definitely deserved to
Yeah,
be
it
sent
wasn't
away for
like
a little
getting
bit.
Al Capone on tax evasion. It's like they actually had legitimate reasons to take this guy out.
Yeah, yeah, a messed up kid. During a sentencing hearing, you got his life story, and I guess Ryan, the father, was kind of emotionally abusive, but of course that doesn't excuse like the heinous CP crimes.
So those are the two main ones, and there have been others that some have thought they could be potential assassination attempts. Others, it's just, either coincidence or whatever, and stop talking about it. There was another thing about I think it was Donald Trump was at the UN when he was president, and the escalator stopped working. And some are wondering if that was just a mechanical error or if somebody was trying to do something to harm a man who was nearing 80 years old, not really in the best physical shape in the world. And then there's others, of course, the White House Correspondents' Dinner from about a month ago, from when we're recording this, and then just others. There was a shooting at the White House that happened just the other day. There was another guy who tried to do that to Mar-a-Lago. Like I said, when I was down there just about a month and a half ago, I tried going on that stretch in Palm Beach, and you can't even get anywhere near Mar-a-Lago anymore. I know people used to be able to drive through on that intercoastal area. Nope, it's blocked off. There's cops. You got to turn around and go all the way back through West Palm Beach. So, are there others that I'm either forgetting about because, like you said, everything blends together, or any other threats, or whatever else that was going on that we could talk about that you've included in the book?
The big one we should hit is probably the Iranian conspiracy
Oh,
theories.
yes, yes.
And yeah, that's what my book was actually supposed to be published earlier this year. But when the war started, you had guys like Pete Hegseth go up, and that was one of their excuses for starting the war was like, the Ayatollah tried to assassinate Trump, but Trump got the last laugh. I think those were Hegseth's exact words. But really, from what I could tell, the Iranian assassination plots were kind of like the so-called plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, where you had like 12 militia guys with absolutely no capacity and then 13 undercover informants or agents. It was a similar case here. The most interesting case was a Pakistani man was arrested on July 12th, 2024, the day before Trump was shot in the ear. And when the case is announced about a month later that this Pakistani was supposedly working on behalf of Iran on an assassination plot against Trump, everybody kind of assumed that these cases had to have been linked somehow. And I think, that's a reasonable assumption to make. The timing sure is odd, but if you look at the details, again, it's really a joke of a plot. Apparently, Israel actually got intelligence in early 2024 that this was some kind of potential terrorist. And what does the government do? They let him into the country on purpose in April 2024. There was a reporter named John Solomon has sources who compared it to Operation Fast and Furious, where with that they were allowing illegal gun sales on purpose to see where the guns would go. Apparently, under the Biden administration, they had some initiative where they'd let potential terrorists into the country on purpose just to see where they'd go, like what networks they were possibly involved with. And so this Pakistani guy, Asif Merchant, is led into the country. Uh, some leader from a local mosque has somebody drive him around because he has no money, doesn't even speak English. Uh, and the guy driving him around turns out to be Afghan who had helped with the U.S. forces as a translator in Afghanistan, who's now an FBI informant. So his driver's an FBI informant. They have one meeting in a hotel where he sketches something on the back of a napkin about potentially, killing a politician, but it's really not any kind of firm plan. And the informant then introduces him to two undercover agents who are posing as hitmen. They take him to a strip club where they supposedly discuss a possible plan. And he tells them, well, hey, meet me in Pakistan in September and we'll give you more details about the target, if there is a target. I never admits that Trump was the target, but in any event, he's arrested as he tries to leave the country on July 12th. He did tell the FBI that, yes, I work for Iran and they were trying to get me to formulate a plan to assassinate politicians. So he does believe that he was working for Iran, but covering the case, I just don't think he was all there in the head. He didn't speak English, didn't have any weapons, didn't have any money, absolutely zero capacity. As far as the plan goes, he never had a firm target, date, any sort of like sophisticated plan. So it doesn't seem like there was much of a threat there. But nevertheless, this case is being cited as a reason to go to war with Iran. I mean, when Ted Cruz was debating Tucker Carlson about Iran, he said Iran tried to hire hitmen to take out Trump. Well, those hitmen that Cruz was referencing were undercover FBI agents, so it's kind of a joke.
Yeah, well, Ted Cruz said a lot of untrue things in that interview as well from about a year ago, and didn't even know the population of Iran, didn't know anything about their culture. But it's a different story. It's just it's. I think the last thing I want to ask you is that we are living in this culture of Luigi Mangione where it seems like half the country is like, yeah, not saying I agree with shooting somebody, but I understand why someone would want to
Mhm.
do that. Hassan Piker recently said that there's a thing called social murder where Brian, what's his name? Brian something, the guy from United Healthcare who was killed, that he committed social murder because more people died because they're healthcare provider dropped them than like Osama bin Laden did on 9/11 or something, some ridiculous thing. And that in order for people to see some type of justice, you just go out and shoot these people. And I don't know. I try to live in a sane world, and I don't agree with something like that. But it just seems that, especially since Charlie Kirk, where it wasn't even so much a politician or an entertainer, but it was someone like your next door neighbor is so flippant about it and just going, yeah, well, he shouldn't have said racist things on his show. He was just a podcaster. And the sad part is, from my view with the Charlie Kirk thing, is that after a couple of weeks, he turned into Sam Hyde talked about this as well. You basically have 2 weeks to start cracking down on your enemies domestic. And they didn't do it. They dropped the ball. Sure, a couple of school teachers and nurses lost their jobs, but many of them, if you want to follow along, quietly got rehired and got back pay. Some of
Yeah.
them have sued to get their jobs back and have been successful over it. So, yeah, a couple of people lost their jobs over terrible social media posts celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk, but it seemed like that the crackdown that should have happened didn't. And the same thing with after Trump was shot. in Butler and the potential assassination attempt in Palm Beach just 2 months later. Didn't seem like anything was going on. And it seems to me that you could either look conspiratorially and say that, oh, there's foreign influence in there, that they wanted certain things, that Charlie Kirk was uh, say about a certain Middle Eastern democracy that he was losing his in favor of, which he has come out and he's talked about that in the text messages, saying you guys need to change your strategy. And then not long after, he's shot in the neck. It just seemed to me that in order to curb this, to really tamp this down, that there should have been more proactive steps. And it just didn't seem like there was. And the lesson here is Charlie Kirk is a meme. And Donald Trump didn't get shot. He staged it. It was Heinz ketchup. They're in Pennsylvania after all. So, of course, it's going to be Heinz 57 on his ear. And it seems like I would say most of the population right now, at least the people that are very online, are not really, don't really care about this. That this just happened 2 years ago, and it's like, that's ancient history. What are you talking about? Move on. And I don't like the fact that we're supposed to move on from something. And that's why I like the fact that you wrote a book about this to ensure that we don't move on from these topics.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, and I wish I had, some words of wisdom for you as to like why people are like this, why we need to like what we could do to address the public apathy. I'm afraid that the country is almost like an open air insane asylum. So I don't have any promise or any hope that these type of events are going to subside anytime soon. I think in the past there was more opportunity in this country, which probably prevented a certain type of person from going over the edge. It's Daryl Cooper makes the point that the assassination culture of the late 60s and 70s came after, Martin Luther King, JFK, all the people that inspired hope had been killed themselves. And there was sort of like a backlash to that lasted through the 70s with
Yeah,
like the
hey, what happened
weather.
to Bill Ayers? Is he in prison right now?
Is he still a professor? I don't know. He's
Oh,
probably
that's
collecting
right.
a.
He ended up getting pardoned and he became a professor and he ended up being a mentor to a future president of the United States. So yeah, whether
Yeah, probably
it,
collecting a pension on a taxpayer pension
Angela
now.
Davis, all of them. Yeah, it didn't seem like there was much of a crackdown from these with the 60s radicals in the 70s and the 80s. And we're kind of seeing that right now, that there isn't the crackdown on the people. And it could be anybody, because this Cole Allen, the story, if you use Occam's razor, is that he was this smart tech guy or guy from California, drove all the way across the country because he's mad about the Epstein files or something. I don't know. And he tries to commit this murder on politicians, save for Kash Patel. And it just, a lot of it in some ways didn't make sense. But if you look at it through the lens of the Occam's razor, is they said he seemed like a normal guy, and you're like, yeah, exactly, normal people are calling for executions and assassinations now. So you're not looking at some type of unique revolutionary. It could be your next door neighbor and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, and on the other side of the fence, though, we've got right wingers saying, hey, the details don't matter. All you need to know is that the left wants you dead. And that's not the approach, obviously, I took with this book. This book is a forensic breakdown specifically to, the security failures. It's a minute by minute account of what happened in both Butler and Palm Beach. And it's the most comprehensive biographical, uh, you know, accounts of the two would-be Trump assassins. So I also disagree with the right wingers with the notion that we just need, like, this is just about hate. I think there's something deeper and more structural, if not a conspiracy theory. These our bureaucracies like the Secret Service are being incentivized to fail, considering that a lot of the people involved in Butler were later promoted. In fact, the head of Trump's security detail is now the director of the entire agency. So, yeah, again, I wish I had a better answer about the cultural issues, but I could only do the work. And then hopefully, thankfully, people like you do care about it. And hopefully, yeah, something will change with the culture eventually.
Yeah, I don't. I'm generally somebody who is right wing, whatever that means nowadays. I don't want to see the president shot, and I didn't want to see Joe Biden shot, and I didn't want to see Obama or George W. Bush. You say whatever you want about them as people, but if you don't have order in society, you have what's called disorder, and we are very disordered right now. And we have the disorderly that seem to be, as you said, kind of running the asylum here in this country. But I guess if there's a way we can get back to some semblance of sanity, why don't you go check out Ken Silva's book? It's called the Trump Assassination Plots. It's available. You can go through the Libertarian Institute, but there is a link to the Amazon page. Here's the way you can purchase it. It is out right now. But yes, go over to the libertarianinstitute.org. They have some great books over there as well. And especially this recent one that just came out last month now that this is going out in June, with Ken Silva. Ken, my guest today. I really appreciate you for being on the show. Where can we find all things Ken Silva on social media?
Yeah, besides the book at the Libertarian Institute, I run a conservative slash libertarian news site called headlineusa.com. So if you're looking just for a good site to get all the essential news, politics, we run a lot of antiwar.com articles. Check out our news site over there, headlineusa.com.
I will share it right now for my people out there. Ugh, just looking at today's headlines. We're recording this the previous Thursday. I just E. Jean Carroll. Uh,
Yes.
and she's a real sane person, naming her dog Tits and her cat Vagina or whatever. Ugh, anyways, but yeah, go over check out Ken Silva's book in the Trump Assassination Plots, libertarianinstitute.org and headlineusa.com, and go check him out on social media. Ken, it was great talking to you. Best of luck with the book. Hopefully, you won't have any more sequels. Hopefully, you're not going to have to do revisions and oh, hey, we got to do a third edition of this book because all of this has happened since the second revision and since the original publication of the book. So hopefully that this is it for you, but you're doing God's work and trying to get to the bottom of this.
Well, thank you. Thanks again for your interest.
And thank you for the interest in the Check Your Brain podcast. Thank you for watching or listening to this. I'll be back with another free episode coming out for you next Wednesday. If you do want more from me, go over to Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur, TonyMazur. You can subscribe for free if you'd like, but most of my stuff is paywalled. It's just $3 per month if that's of interest to you. Or if not, then just go check me out next Wednesday for another free edition of the Check Your Brain podcast. Have yourselves a good one and see you soon. Bye now.